The moving truck sat in the driveway like a silent witness, its back wide open, yawning toward the house I no longer called home. The morning sun had barely begun to stretch its arms over the rooftops of our quiet Austin neighborhood. Boxes lined the walkway, some marked kitchen, others memories, and one that simply read office. Each scribbled label was a small eulogy. The stillness was almost cruel. Birds chirped faintly, a neighbor's sprinkler hissed, but otherwise, silence. It's funny how no one ever notices when something ends. They just keep walking their dogs, drinking their coffee, waving good morning. This was once my parents' house. Now, legally, it was Corinne's. She didn't earn it, she maneuvered for it. Behind polite smiles and endless family discussions, she'd pushed me out with the kind of grace only a practiced manipulator could wield. And here I was, packing up my life with surgical precision. I wasn't sad, not really, just done. Sometimes, leaving is the only way to stay sane. Corinne pulled up in her spotless SUV like she was arriving at a photo shoot. She didn't even glance at the truck, just clicked her heels on the pavement and opened her arms like she was blessing the scene. 3 of her staff followed, all in crisp polos, one holding a clipboard. She looked at the boxes as if they were weeds in her garden. "Take your trash with you, Lark. We've got no room for your old junk." I didn't react, not with my face anyway. But my eyes caught the glint of something on the lawn. A frame. One of Dad's antique wood frames, the one he restored by hand during his last summer. It was lying sideways in the grass like roadkill. I looked back at the box labeled family. There was something so rehearsed in her voice, like a customer returning a broken item, that tone she always used when I came back from college with ideas, dreams. "That's cute, Lark, but real life doesn't work like that." I didn't speak. I just breathed through my nose and told myself, this is almost over. Growing up, I was the helper, the one who cleared the table, ran errands, sat by Mom's bedside during the long, slow decline. Corinne was the achiever, the one everyone praised, the one with the resume, the boyfriend who became a fiancé, then a husband, then something else. I was invisible in my own family's narrative. Family dinners were a symphony of interruptions. I'd begin a thought, just one thought, and be spoken over, forgotten. These weren't big betrayals, just micro-cuts, the kind that don't bleed right away but pile up over time. Respect is earned, but so is peace. And today, I chose peace. Then it came, the real blow. Corinne nodded toward a small box by the porch. "That old trash? It's probably moldy. Just toss it." It was labeled Dad's papers. I knew what was inside. I'd seen the envelope last month, tucked beneath his Navy discharge certificate. It held the original deed to the property, the document that proved Dad had listed both our names before the lawyers got involved, before Corinne's husband reorganized the estate. I didn't say a word. I just bent down, lifted the box gently, and walked it to my car. One of the staff, young guy, maybe early 20s, caught my eye. His expression flickered. He looked away too quickly. They say silence speaks volumes, but so does a glance that lingers 1 second too long. I closed the trunk. Didn't slam it, just closed it. Corinne was already turning to her staff. "Make sure the living room gets aired out. Smells like old paper." I took one last look at the porch. The cracks in the concrete were still there from the year Dad fell off the ladder, trying to hang those Christmas lights by himself. No one helped him that day, not even me. She always said I had nothing, no legacy, no voice. As I stepped into the car, she called out, "Don't come crawling back when you realize you have nothing left." I didn't even turn my head. I already left the nothing behind. In the rearview mirror, I saw the same young staffer crouch to pick up the fallen frame. He dusted it off with his sleeve, looked toward my car, then quickly turned away. They called it trash. I called it history. That small act, someone noticing, it stayed with me. I pulled into the parking lot of Barton Springs Assisted Living just after lunch. The sun was high, warm on my arms as I stepped out of the car, but inside, I felt cold. This wasn't a place I belonged, not by age, not by need, but it was the only place left that didn't reek of someone else's decisions. No rooms filled with Corinne's voice, No walls echoing my father's silence. Just beige buildings, wide sidewalks, and well-manicured hedges lining the quiet stretch near the park. The entrance smelled of lemon cleaner and air conditioning. A woman behind the desk smiled and said, "Welcome, Ms. Monroe," like I was checking into a hotel, not checking out of my life. I nodded, said thank you, signed where she pointed. Small talk fluttered around me, weather, lunch menus, daily activities, but it all felt like white noise through a thick pane of glass. I wasn't running, I just needed to stop hearing the sound of my own name said like an inconvenience. I wheeled my own suitcase down the hall to room 2B. The carpet was stiff, the walls freshly painted, the kind of clean that made you feel like nothing had ever really happened here. Once inside, I placed the box marked Dad's papers on the desk and didn't touch it again for hours. I unpacked slowly, not because I had too much stuff, but because each item forced me to make a choice. Keep or discard, remember or forget. This is temporary. All of it is temporary, I whispered. A phrase I'd told myself since I was 12, sitting by Mom's bed, while Corinne made college plans and smiled at neighbors. I pulled out the embroidered pillow my mother stitched during chemo, tiny roses, slightly faded. I laid it gently on the bed, then immediately covered it with a plain beige cushion, too much history staring back. While setting up the small dresser, I opened a folder and spotted it, the family trust summary Corinne had emailed months ago. I hadn't really read it then. But now, under the fluorescent light of this sanitized room, I saw it clearly. My name wasn't there. It wasn't an oversight. It was clean, deliberate. The space where Lark Monroe should have been listed as co-beneficiary was simply blank. A knock broke the silence. I ignored it. After a moment, it stopped. The world resumed. The phone rang next. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but habit won. "Hey, Lark, it's Marla." My cousin's voice was soft, unsure. She always spoke like she was apologizing for something. "Hi," I said. "They're all at Mom's now. Sort of a celebration, I guess." I waited. "You were mentioned." That pause said everything. I pictured Corinne holding court, laughing, explaining away my absence like it was some minor footnote. "She said you didn't want to be there, that you chose to leave." "Of course she did." I didn't know what to say. "You don't have to." Marla hesitated again. Then she said, with that small-town wisdom people like her still carried, "History is written by the ones who stay." After we hung up, I sat by the window and stared at the courtyard. A butterfly landed on a bush and didn't move. I envied it for being so still without question. Later, I walked the hallway to stretch my legs. A small table stood near the lounge. On it, a picture frame, silver, expensive looking. I knew the photo before I even reached it. It was from Dad's retirement party, the whole family arranged around him like a living wreath. But when I picked it up, I saw it. I'd been cropped out. I remembered standing on the far right, just beside the cake. Now the image ended just before my shoulder would have begun. A note on the back read, "To brighten up the place, love, Corinne." They didn't yell. They didn't accuse. They just edited. "They didn't break me," I whispered to myself. They just quietly made sure I was never seen. Back in my room, the sun was beginning to dip. Shadows stretched across the floor. Another knock, gentler this time. It was the young staffer from earlier, Tavi. He smiled, soft-spoken. "We're having a welcome dinner in the rec room. They'd love to see you." "Not tonight," I said. "I've got some reading to do." He nodded and left without pressing. I locked the door, walked over to the desk, opened the folder labeled Trust and Property, took out a red pen, and I started underlining. If I couldn't rewrite the past, I could at least footnote the present. The hallways had gone still. TVs clicked off behind closed doors. A cleaning cart squeaked faintly at the far end of the corridor, but it didn't come near. I sat in the armchair by the window, wrapped in a blanket I didn't remember packing, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of chamomile tea that had gone lukewarm hours ago. Outside, the breeze nudged tree branches like it had something to say, but didn't want to interrupt. I looked at the folder again, the same one I'd underlined earlier with that sharp red pen. It sat on my lap like a weight, not a stack of paper. Tonight didn't feel like healing. It felt like confirmation. I already knew what I was going to find, deep down. I think I've known for years, but it's easier to tell yourself you're being paranoid than to admit they really did it. Dad used to say, "Never assume kindness where inheritance is involved." He meant it as a joke, but he said it too often for it to be one. I opened the folder again. This time, no red pen, no rush, just reading. The trust documents were clean, crisp, professionally done, probably by someone who wore navy suits and called every dollar a distribution. I skimmed past the introductory boilerplate and stopped at a line that hit like cold steel. Beneficiaries deemed absent by choice at time of estate execution shall forfeit interest. My name wasn't even mentioned in full, just estranged dependents. Estranged, as if I packed up and ran away to Tahiti, as if I wasn't the one who stayed behind when Mom got sick, as if I didn't clean up vomit while Corinne practiced speeches for charity luncheons. I flipped through the pages faster now, looking, hoping, dreading. Then I saw it, the amendment date, September 19th, 2021, that weekend. The same one I took Mom to the ER alone. Everyone else had plans. Corinne had a speaking engagement. Aunt Marcy was in Colorado. The whole family disappeared that weekend. And while I was sitting on a plastic chair outside the ICU, they were rewriting the map to erase me. My hands started shaking. Not from surprise, no. From something deeper. The kind of hurt that's too old to be dramatic. The kind that just settles in. I pulled out my phone. Fenella Sloan. I hadn't called her in years. But she worked with Dad for 2 decades, back when he still handled things himself. If anyone knew what this was, she would. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Lark," she said. "It's been years. I was wondering when you'd call." I sent her a scan of the document while we talked. She didn't say much at first. Just a lot of quiet clicks as she scrolled through her laptop. Then, "This clause, it wasn't in the original. I remember the first version. Your dad wanted it split evenly." "When did it change?" "Looks like 2021. Your sister filed the amendment, co-signed by your cousin. He's with Marlon Gray now, isn't he?" I didn't answer. "You could challenge this, Lark. It'd be ugly, but even the process could cost them more than what they walked away with." I thanked her. We said goodbye. She didn't ask why it took me this long. She knew. I sat in silence after that, not thinking, not feeling, just sitting. Then I got up, walked over to the mirror. "So that's how they've been preparing to forget me," I said. My voice sounded distant, like someone else's. I didn't cry. I placed the documents back in the folder. Then I pulled out a notebook I kept in my drawer. Green leather cover, frayed edge. I'd titled it Notes to Myself, back when I thought journaling might help me sleep. I wrote 3 lines. "You're not crazy. You saw it all before but chose hope. Now choose clarity." I closed the notebook. A soft knock at the door. I didn't answer. Footsteps retreated, but when I finally opened the door, a small envelope lay on the floor. My name in slanted cursive. Corinne's handwriting. Inside, one line written in blue ink. "Whatever you think you found, don't forget. We warned you not to come back." I folded it slowly. They thought this was about returning. It never was. It was about making sure they didn't bury me alive. The morning started like any other. I walked into the lounge, hoping for something warm, something plain, maybe toast, coffee, a quiet corner. What I got instead was a theater production. They were at the coffee station, 2 aides, whispering like teenagers at a high school locker. "That's her," one said. "The sister who got cut off." The other chuckled. "Guess money skips the quiet ones." They didn't see me standing there, and even if they had, I doubt they'd have stopped. I didn't react, not outwardly. Then came the crescendo. Corinne waltzed in like she was visiting royalty, all manicured hands and high-volume voice, dragging behind her a garbage bag and a smug smile. "Lark, sweetheart, I found a few things you left behind. Thought I'd personally return them." She placed the bag next to the coffee table, loudly. Heads turned. Residents looked over their glasses, paused their breakfasts. I stayed still, calm. "I didn't ask for anything," I said. Her voice was syrupy, for the audience, not for me. Oh, it's no trouble. I just couldn't bear the thought of your memories sitting by the curb. The bag sagged with the weight of God knows what. I knew the game. It wasn't about the contents, it was about delivery. Humiliation disguised as generosity. Tavi stood nearby, frozen, like she wanted to stop it but didn't know how. I looked Corinne in the eye. You forgot to include what you value most. Appearances. She didn't miss a beat. Some trash just doesn't know where it belongs. I didn't flinch. I didn't touch the bag. I turned and walked out. My hands didn't stop shaking until I reached my room. The door clicked behind me like the end of a scene. I sat at my desk and opened the notebook. Wrote one line. Even silence can be weaponized, but not twice. That's when it shifted. Something in me. This wasn't avoidance anymore. It was permission. I'd been giving them license to erase me because I thought walking away meant peace. But peace isn't quiet if you're being smothered in it. A few hours passed. I was reading by the window when there was a soft knock. Tavi again. Her eyes darted down the hallway. I wasn't supposed to give this to you. She slipped me an envelope. Inside, an email printout. Old. Dated 3 years ago. A back and forth between Corinne and our brother Silas. It read like a joke, but I could see the teeth behind the laughter. Make her sign it. Frame it as routine. She's too grateful to question it. She'll never know what she's signing away. My signature was right there on the bottom. I remembered the day. Corinne brought over soup, said it was for records. She handed me a stack of papers while Mom was napping. I didn't read a word. I signed because it was my sister, and I was tired. Tavi whispered, I found it in the shred pile. I couldn't just pretend I didn't see it. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. But something inside me stopped forgiving. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the rights. It was that they laughed while doing it. Later, I called Fenella again. I need to meet, I said. No more questions? She asked. Just confirmation. We set a time. Then I started pulling files, notes, receipts. I labeled folders with dates and scribbled connections in the margins. Years of small slights began stitching together into something that looked a lot like strategy. Women are told to let things go, be gracious, don't stir the pot, but I was tired of playing nice in a rigged game. Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Well, I didn't consent anymore. That evening, Corinne returned. She walked in without knocking, smirking like nothing had changed. Let's not pretend we're equals in this place, she said. You stay quiet, and we'll stay civil. I stood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't tremble. That was your last civil moment, I said. You just didn't feel it leave. I woke up early, not out of habit, but from purpose. For the first time in weeks, the ache in my chest didn't feel like grief. It felt like clarity. The table in my suite was covered edge to edge. Printouts, emails, copies of trust amendments. The letter Tavi found in the shred pile. Notes scribbled in red pen. Arrows connecting names to dates to damage. Brick by brick. This wasn't a shrine to what they'd done. It was evidence. I organized it all like a crime scene, because that's what it was. Not a crime of violence, a crime of erasure, of silence enforced by smiles and passive cruelty. Every document I stacked answered a question I hadn't let myself ask before. I opened a new email draft to Fenella. Subject, official engagement request. Message, it's not revenge. It's documentation, for the day someone asks, why didn't you say anything? I want to be ready. By noon, the light had shifted, and the hallway outside was stirring with the buzz of cleaning carts and lunch trays. That's when Corinne knocked. No announcement this time, no crowd to perform for. She stepped in with that familiar look, the one she wore when she needed to reset the narrative. Warm, but tight. Calculated concern. Look, she started, easing into a seat like this was casual. I know we haven't been fair, but what you're doing, it's not helping anyone. She placed her hands on her knees. Theatrics. Soft tone. False humility. Mom didn't want court battles, she continued. She wanted peace. That's why we didn't push harder when you, well, left the way you did. Left. That word scraped something raw inside me. She was scared, scared it would all fall apart. I stayed quiet, let her fill the space with her edited version of truth. Then I cut in. Mom was scared, all right. Scared of what you were becoming. She blinked. The shift in tone threw her. I don't want to fight, she said, voice shaky now, eyes shimmering like she might cry. It almost looked sincere. Almost. I opened the drawer next to me and pulled out the envelope, slid it across the table to her. Recognize that date? She didn't pick it up, just stared at it. That's the week Mom was doped up on painkillers. Barely knew what day it was. You had her sign that, didn't you? Her lips parted like she might lie, but she didn't. She just sat there, still. So I pulled out my phone, placed it flat on the table, and hit record. You want to add anything while we're still being civil? She stood, shaky, like her heels had gone soft. You'll regret making this ugly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She walked out faster than she came in. That night, I sent Fenella another email. Subject: update. She came. She tried emotional leverage. She failed. Then I wrote in the notebook, not all family deserves access. An apology made to protect power isn't an apology, it's PR. Love isn't a hostage negotiation. An hour later, Tavi passed by and left a hot coffee on my counter. No words, just a nod. She knew. I sat with that coffee for a while, warm in my hands, steadying. Closure doesn't come wrapped in ribbon. Sometimes it's a folder full of proof. I took everything I'd gathered, each page, each printout, and placed it in a large envelope, wrote Fenella's firm name across the front, pressed the seal shut. I wasn't threatening them, I was warning them. The difference. This time, I had receipts. The hallway to the mailroom was dimmer than usual. Evening had crept in slow, dragging the heat down but leaving tension behind. My steps echoed. Or maybe that was just me, too aware of every sound. I heard them before I saw them, voices behind the cracked supply door. 2 staff members, a visiting cousin. I recognized his laugh. She thinks she owns the place now. Wasn't even invited, just showed up and started stirring the pot. I paused. No reaction. Not yet. That had become my new rule. Nothing unless necessary. I kept walking, but their words followed me down the corridor like gum stuck to the sole of a shoe. Familiar phrasing, variations of what Corinne had spat in the common lounge days ago. I hadn't realized how quickly venom spreads once you crack the bottle. Back in my room, I didn't unpack the mail. Instead, I went to find Tavi. 15 minutes later, we were huddled in the supply closet, fluorescent light humming above. She pulled up the security footage on the screen mounted near the circuit box. The timestamp matched the morning I found the garbage bag outside my door. There she was, Corinne, directing a worker where to place the box, leaning in, laughing, then muttering something. Tavi turned the volume up. Trash belongs outside. The worker froze, looked at her like she'd just slapped a baby, then nodded silently and walked away. No one questioned her. No one corrected her. I didn't speak. The tape didn't lie. It confirmed what I already knew. But seeing it, hearing it, was like stepping into cold water barefoot. I left the closet with a still face and shaking hands. By the time we returned to the lounge, the phone was already ringing. Adira's voice came through the intercom speaker. I need to speak to the staff, and to Milo, if he's there. Everyone froze. Tavi leaned in, clicked speaker. I'm sorry Lark misunderstood, but she's not acting like a daughter. I can't have chaos in my house. There was a pause. Corinne's voice filtered in, soft, low, confirming. We'll handle it. She needs space. Handle it. Like I was a utility bill, a stain on the rug. I stood behind the door of the lounge, just out of sight. I didn't want them to know I was there. My mother didn't have to disown me in writing. She did it through suggestion, through calm tones, through trust handed to the one who twisted the story fastest. I didn't demand this rejection. She offered it. That night, Isolde stayed over. Her presence softened the air, but not the weight on my chest. After her bath and 2 stories, she curled into bed beside me. Half asleep, she mumbled, "Grandpa once said, never let one child erase another's shadow." I wish he'd never taught me that. My throat went dry. That line, it was mine. He whispered it to me when I was young and scared Corinne would always outshine me. It wasn't something he said in front of anyone else. And now it belonged to Isolde. Somehow passed down, echoed in her small, sleepy voice. Legacy isn't about assets. It's about what gets remembered. It's about who refuses to forget. After she fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed, notebook open. I wrote down her words. Then I looked across the room. Trust documents, printouts, a paused, still frame of the security footage. I whispered aloud, "They think I'm silent. They don't see I'm writing." The envelope from Fenella sat on the desk. My phone buzzed. New message. "Gather at courthouse tomorrow morning. Be ready." I closed the notebook, pulled the blinds shut. Whatever was coming, I wasn't afraid of the noise anymore. The lounge felt colder than it had any right to be. It wasn't the air conditioning. It was the tension, carefully curated, just like everything Corinne orchestrated. Chairs were pulled into a tight circle, but the space between hearts in that room couldn't have been wider. Residents watched from the edges, pretending to read magazines, sipping lukewarm tea. They weren't here for the drinks. They were here for the show. I stepped in last. Vance glanced up. No smile. No nod. Just tired eyes. Adira was already seated in the center, between Corinne and Vance. Her hands folded like she was in church. Corinne's nails tapped against the side of her mug. Measured. Confident. "Mom wants us to restore what's been broken," Corinne said, voice calm. Practiced. The word restore hung heavy, like a demand disguised as an olive branch. No one moved. You could hear the tick of the wall clock. Adira stood slowly. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her voice trembled, not from weakness but from something rehearsed too often. "Lark, I'm so sorry for all I failed you. I was weak. I was afraid." I let her speak. And then I asked, without raising my voice, "An apology must repair something. What part of me did you build after breaking me?" A sharp inhale from the nurse at the back, a subtle cough from a resident who realized they'd wandered into something deeper than evening bingo. Corinne's smirk faltered. Just slightly. Enough. Adira sat down. And then Vance stood. He didn't look at me. He looked at them. "You know what she's done," he said, pointing gently. Not at me, but toward the envelope sitting on the edge of the table, still sealed. "Every shred of evidence is clear. I am tired of choosing sides." He turned toward me, for the first time in years without flinching. "You were right." Silence cracked open. Corinne's lips parted, then clamped shut. Her jaw flexed like she was chewing glass. Staff shifted in their chairs. A few glanced at me differently now, maybe for the first time. I didn't smile. I stepped forward, slow and quiet. "I'm not here to be forgiven," I said. "I'm here to be seen." I placed the envelope on the table in front of my mother, a neat, heavy thing. Every page inside cost me more than money. It cost nights of wondering whether memory could be trusted over documents. I watched her look down at it. No one reached for it. Someone near the back whispered, "She used to be nothing." It didn't sting. It sounded like a fact from someone who hadn't been paying attention. Corinne finally regained her voice. "You don't know what you're doing, Lark." I met her eyes. For the first time, she blinked. "I don't need to know everything. I just need the truth to stand where it belongs." I turned, walked toward the door, the click of my steps softer than the silence they left behind. At the threshold, Tavi met me. Said nothing. Just handed me a folded paper. "Court documents. Delivery confirmed. Tomorrow it begins." I woke up before the sun did, not out of fear, out of clarity. The folder lay beside me on the nightstand, thicker than it looked, heavy with truth. I went through it one more time before dressing. No jewelry, no flair, just a clean button-down, soft navy slacks, and the same pair of flats I wore when I signed my first mortgage. Familiar. Grounded. On the drive, I didn't listen to the radio. I went over my words in my head. Truth lost is power stolen. That was the line I wanted to open with, if they gave me the chance. The courthouse was humming by the time I got there, not chaotic, just alive. Corinne had already arrived, surrounded by lawyers in stiff gray suits and two cousins I hadn't seen since the funeral. Her expression was tight, controlled, but her fingers fidgeted with her earring, same way she did before every lie. People whispered. Some turned to me, subtle nods. Recognition, maybe. Or relief that someone finally stepped forward. A staff member from Barton Springs, Marla, I think, caught my eye. She gave a tiny thumbs up, just enough. I didn't smile, but I nodded. Security ushered me into a side room first, temporary holding for those waiting to be called. There were reporters there, polite but invasive. Mr. Monroe, any comment? Do you think your sister will testify? Will your mother be present today? I just said, you'll see what matters in there. The hearing room wasn't grand, just oak panels and cold chairs. But when I walked in, I felt taller than the walls. Fenella stood beside me, calm as ever. When the judge arrived, the air shifted. Purpose flooded the room. Corinne's team moved first. Motions, objections, noise. Then Fenella stood. Your Honor, we request to enter a recorded confession into the record. The judge raised an eyebrow. Is this material already disclosed? Fenella nodded. It was provided in discovery, yes, but not yet heard. Permission was granted. The screen flickered to life, a low-angle shot from the hallway security cam, grainy but clear. Corinne speaking to a facility worker. She doesn't need to see this. Trash belongs outside. Then the clip shifted to the audio I had pulled from Mom's room when Corinne coaxed her into signing a document with sedatives still evident in her voice. You trust me, don't you? Corinne whispered. My mother replied, slurred. I'm so tired. Then silence. I didn't look at Corinne. I looked at the judge. No one said a word for a full 15 seconds after the video ended. Then the judge spoke. We'll take that into consideration. Corinne's team muttered. Her lawyer leaned in, gesturing wildly. Fenella stood again. One more item, Your Honor. The envelope came out slowly, red string untwisting like it had waited years for this. The original will, Fenella said. Unaltered, witnessed, validated, naming Ms. Lark Monroe as sole executor and beneficiary. Any amendments were made under duress. A collective shift ran through the room. You could feel the ground move. Corinne stood. This is manipulation. The judge held up a hand. We've seen enough. I stood then. No podium, no microphone, just my voice. This was never about revenge, I said. It was about what's rightfully mine, what was taken through cowardice and greed, what my father intended and my mother forgot. I didn't cry. My voice didn't shake. Outside, the sky had brightened without my noticing. Reporters gathered. Staff from Barton Springs lingered on the sidewalk, pretending to check their phones. Corinne walked past me, red-faced, lips tight. Her cousin didn't follow her. She turned once, hissed, You think you've won? I didn't answer her. Instead, I turned to the press and the crowd and simply said, You may consider this house yours, but not its legacy. And in my coat pocket, I felt the folded napkin leaf from months ago. That little handmade knife Tavi gave me when I first stepped into this. The world had wanted me quiet, but today, I didn't whisper. Today, I spoke history instead of letting it be erased. The sun was starting its slow dip behind the hilltops when I stepped through the front doors of the Monroe estate again. It didn't creak this time. No echoes of raised voices. No chill of dread crawling up my back. Just quiet. Stillness. A kind of earned peace. I didn't rush. I walked through each room slowly. Places I'd once avoided like open wounds. The formal dining room, where silence had always meant danger. The front parlor, where I'd once been told to sit up straighter and smile even when my throat burned from swallowing back tears. Now the furniture was covered, the air cleaner, the energy shifted. The staff passed by me, some nodding, some offering soft smiles, no longer wary. I wasn't the outcast anymore. I was just Lark, the woman who'd outlived every twisted lie that once lived in these walls. In my father's old study, I opened the drawer he used to keep locked. Same brass handle, same resistance. Tucked in the back, beneath unused letterhead, was an envelope, sealed in wax, my name scrawled in that familiar, uneven script. I broke the seal with my thumb and unfolded the single sheet inside. His words were heavy, deliberate. I didn't protect you like I should have. I thought staying neutral was noble. It wasn't. It was cowardice. If you're reading this, then I hope you found your voice, because you always had something worth saying. It's never too late to return home, even if only in someone's heart. I sat in his chair and let myself cry. Not out of pain this time, not out of grief, just a soft, full-body sigh of something like peace. He saw me. At the end of it all, he really saw me. Later that week, I stood in the courtyard, staring at the bricks I once wanted to tear down. I thought about selling the place. I really did. There was a sweet offer from a development firm in Dallas. Easy out, clean slate, but it didn't feel right. Power had poisoned Corinne, made her small and cruel. If I wasn't careful, it could do the same to me, just in a different color, under different intentions. So I made a choice. The house wouldn't become a profit. It would become a promise. I called Fenella. I want to turn it into something that lives longer than legacy. A place for women who've been through what I have. A shelter. A stepping stone. Whatever we want to call it. Make it legal. She didn't even blink. Homeward Foundation, she said. I'll draw up the papers. We filed the nonprofit status by the end of the month. A few days later, Corinne tried to sneak in a motion to block it, some noise about historic land use, but the motion was flimsy, and her lawyer barely showed up to defend it. The court tossed it out without ceremony. Funny how quiet her resistance got once there were no cameras rolling. The farewell gathering came on a Saturday. Nothing formal, just folding chairs set up on the lawn, lemonade in glass pitchers, paper plates stacked by the side porch. A few of the old neighbors came, mostly to satisfy curiosity. Some former staff, and even a couple of my dad's business partners, looking sheepish but glad to be invited. I stepped up to the front steps and looked out over the small crowd. My voice didn't tremble. Some homes are built with bricks, I said. Mine was built from all the words I couldn't say until now, but now I've said them, and this house will speak for others too. I talked about the women we'd welcome, the space we'd create. I thanked the nurses who had helped care for my mother during her last years. I didn't mention the fights, the silence, the betrayals. Not because I forgot, but because they didn't get the last word. The applause was soft, but honest. After the guests left and the sun began to bleed into the oak branches, I walked back inside. I climbed the stairs, stopped at the little library room that overlooked the east lawn. I took my old journal from my bag, worn, dog-eared, full of my darkest days and half-formed hopes, and slid it onto the highest shelf. It didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged here, a relic, a beginning. Outside, Isolde was waiting under the big oak with 2 folding chairs and her usual thermos. I joined her without saying anything. We sat in the same silence we once used to survive, now transformed into something comfortable. She nudged the journal toward me. "Read something," she said. So I did. I opened to the first page and began to read aloud, voice steady. And as the wind whispered through the leaves, I realized, perhaps this wasn't the end of my story, just the start of another woman's beginning.